Dear students, today we can see the topic population growth. The size of a population for any species is not static. It keeps on changing with the time, and it depends on various factors like food availability, that is how much food is available for them, or the predation pressure, or even the adverse weather. So if the climatic condition changes also, there is chance for change in the population size. Okay, so the population density gives us an idea that whether the population is a flourishing population or a declining population. Flourishing population means it is a growing population or it is a declining population. Okay, the density of population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuates due to various processes. There are four main basic processes which is responsible for fluctuation in the population density. So for what are the four basic processes? They are natality or mortality, immigration or emigration. Okay, natality and immigration can lead to increase in population density, and mortality and emigration can lead to decrease in population density. Okay. Now, what is natality? Natality, we can say it as the birth rate. Okay, natality means what? Birth rate. It refers to the number of births during a given period in the population. The number of births during a given period in the population is said to be as natality or birth rate. Then what is mortality? It is the death rate. That is, it refers to the number of death in the population during a given period. Okay, the number of death in the population during a given period is called mortality. Then what is immigration? It is the number of individuals of the same species that have come into this habitat or into this population from elsewhere, from some other habitat during the time period under consideration. Okay, so what is immigration? It is the number of individuals of the same species that have come into this population from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Then what is emigration? It is the number of individuals of the population who left this population and gone elsewhere during the period under consideration. Okay, so emigration is the number of individuals of the population who left this population or who left this habitat and gone elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Okay. Now, when we consider n as the population density at a time t, then the population density at a time t plus 1 is calculated by the equation nt plus 1 is equal to nt plus b plus i minus d plus e. So what is nt plus 1? Nt plus 1 is the population density at a time t plus 1. That is equal to nt. What is nt? Population density at a time t plus b plus i. B is birth rate or natality and I is immigration minus d plus c. D is death rate or mortality plus E is emigration. Okay. So we can say if B plus I is more than D plus C, then the population density will be increasing. Okay, the population density increases when B plus I, that is birth rate and immigration, is more than death rate and emigration. Under normal conditions, the birth rate and death rate are the most important factors that influence the population density. But only under special conditions, immigration or emigration can influence the population density. Okay, that is, suppose if a new habitat is being formed, then colonies will be formed there, isn't it? So immigration can contribute to the population growth than the birth rate. Okay, but under normal condition, birth rate and death rate are the two important factors that influence the population density. Okay. Next is the growth models. what is this growth model or growth curve? Growth of a population can be expressed by a mathematical expression, which we say it as the growth curve. Okay, so growth curve is the growth of a population which is expressed mathematically. Okay, the mathematical expression of the growth of a population is said to be growth curve. So in growth curve, the logarithm of total number of individuals in a population is plotted against the time. Okay. So we can say that growth model shows the specific and predictable pattern of growth of a population with the time. Okay. Now there are two growth models. One is the exponential growth and another is the logistic growth. So first, when we see about the exponential growth, so this growth occurs when resources in the habitat are unlimited. Okay, resources means the food and the space. Okay, so when this food and space, that is these resources in the habitat are unlimited, then each species which are living in that habitat is having the ability to uh, realize fully its innate potential to grow in number and to reproduce. Okay, so when the resources is unlimited, they will be getting more and more amount of resource, isn't it? So they can show its innate potential to grow and to reproduce. So this was actually observed by Darwin also. Okay, so while developing his theory of natural selection, the Darwin's theory is said to be as theory of natural selection. So while developing that theory, he observed this exponential growth which was seen in the organisms. Okay, so in exponential growth, the population growth is exponential, or we can say it is in geometric fashion. That is, the number of individuals will be going on doubling. Okay, so when we derive the equation for this, we can consider the population size as n. Okay, so if in a population size n, the birth rate is represented by b and the death rate is represented as d, then the increase or decrease in n, that is the increase or decrease in population density during a unit time period t, that is dn by dt, will be, how we can express dn by dt is equal to b minus d into n. Okay, dn by dt is equal to b minus d into n. B is the birth rate minus death rate into n. Okay, now let us consider b minus d is equal to r. Then the equation will be dn by dt is equal to rn. Okay, dn by dt is the population density at time period t, and n is the population density, and r is what? B minus d is considered as r, isn't it? Actually, r is the intrinsic rate of natural increase, that is birth rate minus death rate will give r. Okay, that is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. How many individuals are added or increased, that is the intrinsic rate of natural increase. Okay, now the r value, R value is the intrinsic rate of natural increase, isn't it? R value is a very important parameter which is chosen for assessing the impact of any biotic or abiotic factor on the population growth. Okay. Now, the R value of some of the organisms given is the Norway rat. R value of Norway rat is calculated to be 0.015, and the R value of floor beetle. Floor beetle, it is given in the picture. What is it? It is the beetle which you can find in rice flour or even in the wheat flour. It is 0.12, and the R value of human population in India in the year 1981 was found to be 0.0205. Okay, so this is the R value. of some of the organisms. Okay, so in the previous slide we have seen the equation of exponential growth, that is dn by dt is equal to rn, isn't it? Now in basic calculus we can derive the integral form of this exponential growth as nt is equal to n0 e upon RT. Okay, NT is equal to N0 e to the power RT. Here NT is what the population density after time t, and N0 is equal to population density at time 0. R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase and E is the base of natural logarithm. Its value is 2.71828. Okay. Now, any species which is growing exponentially under such unlimited resources can reach enormous population within a short period of time. This was observed by Darwin also. So, he even said that if any organism is allowed to multiply, for example, if even elephant is allowed to multiply by itself without any check on it, then it will be going on increasing in its population within short period of time. Okay, for to explain such a exponential growth, an anecdote can be popularly narrated. So what is that? That is, the king and the minister sat for a chess game. Okay, the chess game, chess board is there which contains 64 squares in it, isn't it? The king was confident that he will win the game. So he was ready to accept any bet proposed by the minister. And minister said that if he won, he wanted some wheat grains. And the quantity of the wheat grain to be placed is in the chessboard. He need it to be placed in the chessboard. Okay, he said that in the first square, one wheat grain should be kept, and in the second square, two should be kept. That is, it should be doubled every time. Okay, so third square, it should be 4. Fourth square, the grain should be 8. Like that, it should be kept doubling every time. Okay, and the king thought it is a very silly bet, and he accepted the bet, and they started the game. Okay, and at last, unluckily, the minister won the game. Okay, then the king thought that he has to fulfill the bet of the minister. So he started to fill the chessboard with the wheat grain. Okay, so first in the first square he kept 1 grain, second 2, third 4, then 8, like that he was going on filling the squares, each squares with the wheat grain. Okay, so by the time he covered half of the chessboard, he realized that all the wheat which is produced in the entire kingdom, if he pull it together also, it may not be adequate to cover all the 64 squares. Okay, so it is just a comparison only. Okay, just a small narrated story. So you think about just like the wheat, a very minute unicellular organism like paramecium. It divides or it multiplies by binary fission, isn't it? So every time it will be going on dividing. One cell, one paramecium will divide into 2, then 4, then 8, like that it goes on dividing every day. And after 64 days, you imagine how much will be its population. It is a mind-boggling population, isn't it? So this is what a story, a narration given in relation to this exponential growth. Okay, so here when we see the exponential growth, we can get a J-shaped curve. Okay, the curve which we can get is the J-shaped curve. Here in this graph you can see when population size is plotted against time, you can see a J-shaped curve. The red colored curve is the a curve which we get for exponential growth. Okay, now next we can see about the logistic growth. Now, in logistic growth, we can say that this growth occurs in the habitat where there is limited resources. See, no population in any nature, in any habitat, will be having a unlimited resources in it. In most of the habitat we can see what limited resources only, and when limited resources of the when the population increases, automatically competition occurs between the individuals for that limited resource. Okay, then what happens? Only the fittest organism will be surviving, and the others will be slowly eliminated, isn't it? And nature will select the fittest organism to survive and reproduce, so that fittest organism will be reproducing and producing more number of its population. So this is what even Darwin said, and he gave the theory called theory of natural selection. Okay, now a given habitat has will be having enough resources to support a maximum possible number of the population, beyond which no further growth is possible. So that limit up to which the population growth can occur is the nature's carrying capacity, which is represented by the letter K. Okay, so a given habitat has enough resource to support a maximum possible number of that of any population, beyond which no further growth is possible, and that limit is the carrying capacity, nature's carrying capacity, which is represented by the letter K. Okay. Now, a population growing in a habitat with such limited resources will be showing initially a lag phase, followed by phase of acceleration and deceleration, and finally an asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. Now, if you see this in this curve, when the population size is plotted against time in logistic growth, first we can see a lag phase. The blue colored curve is the curve of logistic growth. Okay, so you can see here the first the growth shows lag phase. Lag means a very slow growth occurs. Okay, then it will be followed by phase of acceleration. That means the growth will be maximum. Okay, phase of acceleration, and then you can see it is phase of deceleration. That means slowly it reduces its growth. Okay, then what happens? It reaches an asymptote phase in which a straight line can be obtained. Asymptote means no change occurs further. Okay, a straight line we can obtain. Okay, so this growth curve, we can say it as a sigmoid growth curve or an S-shaped growth curve. So in logistic growth, we can obtain an S-shaped growth curve or the sigmoid growth curve. Okay. So this growth curve is also said to be as Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth curve. Okay, what is the other name? It is also called as Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth because it was given by Pierre Francois Verhulst. Okay, so it is described as the Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth is described by the equation dn by dt is equal to Rn k minus n by k. Here n is the population density at time t, R is the intrinsic rate of natural increase, K is the carrying capacity. Okay. And in this growth, since the resources are limited, always the largest logistic growth model is considered to be a more realistic one. Why? Because in most of the habitat, the resources are limited. Okay, so we cannot expect a exponential growth curve there. We can always get a logistic growth curve. So logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. Okay. Next is the life history variation. The populations evolve to maximize their reproductive fitness, which we can also say it as the Darwinian fitness or having high R value. Okay, always the population will be evolving to maximize their reproductive fitness. That is, the characteristics will be making them to survive in the population and make them to reproduce. in the habitat in which they live. Okay, so many selection pressures will be there, and the organisms have to overcome all that, and they evolve to achieve the most efficient reproductive strategy. Okay, some of the organisms will be breeding only once in their lifetime. Okay, after that they die. So only once in their lifetime they breed, after that they die. For example, in the picture you can see the Pacific salmon fish and the bamboo. The salmon fish, actually it is a marine fish. It will be moving towards the fresh water, so for a spawning, for a breeding. Okay, so there, when it reaches there, it will not be taking much food on the way, and it will be spending more energy because it is moving from sea water to the fresh water, isn't it? So it has to spend a lot of energy for its travel, and it reaches the fresh water where it will breed. Okay, so the egg which is laid, if it has to hatch out, it need the fresh water. So it moves there, it reproduces there, that is, it lays the egg there. Okay, then it will not be taking much food there because the food will be different in the fresh water. Okay, so they will not be taking much food, so it leads to the death of those fishes before they return back to the seawater. Okay, so the Pacific salmon fish will be laying egg only once in their lifetime. Okay, they breed only once in their lifetime. Similarly, in plant, if you see the bamboo plant, it will be living for about 50 years, and at the end of that 50 year, it will produce flowers, fruits, and then they die off. Okay, so this is one type of life variation seen in some organism. Okay, then if you see, some organisms breed many times during their lifetime. For example, birds and mammals, they breed many times during their lifetime. Okay, example we can say birds and mammals. Then some other organisms will be producing a large number of small sized offspring. They will produce a large number of offspring, but they are very small in size. For example, the oyster, you can see the oysters and pelagic fishes. They also produce large number of small sized offspring, while the others, they used to produce small number of large sized offspring. They produce only less number of offspring. Offspring means the young ones, but the size of the offspring will be larger. Okay, for example, we can say birds and mammals, they produce small number of large sized offspring. Okay, so the life history traits have evolved in relation to the constraints which are imposed by the abiotic and biotic components of the habitat. Okay, so constraints means what? The restrictions. So even though various restrictions are imposed by the abiotic and biotic components of the habitat, such life history traits have been evolved in different organisms by which they are able to survive and reproduce in their habitat. Okay.